This week, Lumix is the hot topic. Now this is the Lumix G9. As we all know, there has been a secondary model that's came out of this camera. So today, what we want to do is take a look at those two models side by side and just see what are the differences between these two models in terms of the body and construction. Alright, so let's start with the G9 and we'll end with the G9II. This camera's been out a while, so a lot of you will be familiar with its design. So you can see we've got two buttons here at the front, and we've got a push button to release our sensor, which is a micro four thirds sensor in there. Also got our little switch here, as we're used to. As we pop around here, we can open the flaps. And we see there we have a full HDMI. We have our charging port there, which is a combination between the charge and the USB micro. We also have a headphone jack, and then above that we have the microphone. So it's a well-equipped camera. It's got all the things that we need for doing videos and transferring data, etc. Moving around to the back of the camera here, we can see we have the playback button, functionality buttons, we have our joystick, and we have our mode selecting there for a manual focus, AF continuous, AFS, and AFF, which can be toggled like so. We also have another functionality button here, and then we have our nice scroll wheel, menus, more buttons on the back here with our leverette positioned this way. Screen comes out and articulates as we're used to, and then we have this style of viewfinder cover with a very rectangular viewfinder inside of there. Moving over to the top, we have our top dials here to control what modes we are in, whether that be single shot, dual, 6K, self timer and things like that. Above that we have then the main modes of being manual, movie mode, our custom settings, automatic modes, and the rest. And alongside that, to the right, we have our top screen, which a lot of people have become accustomed to. It's one of the only cameras that Lumix offer with this type of screen on top. Scroll wheel here alongside that. Push button here for recording videos, and our white balance, ISO, and exposure compensation buttons, which are handy to have right there, as well as another scroll wheel. And then our shutter release button. And as we move along, we have our ports, which reveal two SD card sockets. And we also have ability to attach a remote using this section here. And that's our quick overview of the G9. Let's take a look at the new body. Here we have the G9II. Now as you look at this, you could be mistaken that this is actually an Lumix S5 because the body size, its weight, and its construction looks very similar to the S5. Now in terms of the buttons that's on the front here, there's a few missing compared to what we're used to. So there's only the two buttons on the side here which can be customized, and then obviously there's the push release to reveal the micro four thirds sensor. But there's no little toggle switch at the bottom which we had in the previous model. And there's also no sync port here as well for any kind of flash. As we move around to the side of the camera now, it's changed a little bit more as well. So we have two flaps, one revealing the microphone and the headphone socket, and the next one which reveals a full HDMI, and now we're using USB-C. You may or may not notice it, but we've actually got the symbol there that we can actually use an SSD with this camera, which is quite incredible. But today we're not talking about the specs, we're just talking about the body and construction. Let's move over to the back here. So once again we have our back screen, which we're used to, articulation, which has become the norm now for Lumix cameras, which is brilliant and we love it. You got your playback button, you got your control for your LVF there. And then if we actually take a look at the viewfinder itself, we've got a different design to the previous one. It's a little bit more sleek, and it actually sticks out the camera a little bit more, so your nose is less likely to touch the screen as previously. So if we take a look at that one, it's a little bit more flatter in, very subtly. And then on the back here, looks like we've got a bigger viewing area than we had previously, which is quite nice. And the sensor is at the top rather than the bottom. Right, moving across now, we have the newer style selection port here, where we can select single, Let's get you in focus. But we can select single, continuous, and manual autofocus sections on that one, and then we can click the modes inside. The joystick is off to the right. AF on. We've got our Q button, we've got our menu and our scroll wheel. Back display buttons down here. So now it feels very similar at the back to how an S5 would feel. So if we take a look at both of these from the back, here we have the G9, here we have the G9II. Hope you guys can see that. We have our scroll wheel at the top again, how it was in the previous model. But now when we take a look at the top, we have no top screen here at all. And these two sections have been replaced differently. So we have a dedicated wheel now for all our drive modes. And then we have a separate wheel over here for all the main modes, the manual, the recording video, customs, and the rest. Our on-off switch is right here, how it is in the S series. We've got our record button there. And then we've got the usual white balance, ISO, exposure compensation, as well as the scroll wheel here. So a few things have changed. It's definitely headed towards where the S cameras are. As we can see, these are the two main differences between the two. And now let's take a look at what's underneath here. So these are our ports here. As you can see, you can take ST on both of those, but there's slightly faster readout speeds on those as well. But it is very similar in its design. One thing you will notice though is there's less leather or grippy coverings on these things, whereas on the previous model that was all kind of gripped out, so it was actually easier to open the doorway. Now it's a little bit more slippy to get access to. We still have our remote that we can kind of dive into and grab it in the same position as the previous one. And yeah, let's head around underneath actually. Let's take a look here. Battery is taking the new battery, which is empty at the moment. And the previous model, the battery that we took, was a slightly smaller one there. So we've got a slight improvement on the battery there. So that's it. That's the two bodies side by side, so to speak. Let's just get them there. What do you think? Is this a improvement on the body size and the styling, or is it a step backwards not having a top screen? I'd like to hear your opinions below in the comments. Thanks for watching, and make sure to head over to Castle Cameras to get yours. Okay, have a great weekend.